real quick. I'm just going to introduce our speakers for tonight. Alan Gallant. And actually, sorry, your name again? Greg, I'm sorry. Greg. And your last name? Yeah, Greg. Who's here. So let's give them a warm welcome and let's get started.
Well, it's good to be here, and you all don't look scary to me. I wish I was your age, though. Now, you have to realize something about me right off. I never used to speak like this. I have a speech problem now. Back in 2017, I had a severe stroke, which took away my voice. There were other things that happened to me, but they all returned, but my voice didn't. So over time, I had to learn to speak again. So this is the best I can do. And because it's late at night, it's going to be a little more slurry. So if you don't understand what I say, just stop me and say, "Hey, you, what do you say?" And I will repeat it. Okay? Fair enough? So 4 fathers were in the hospital room waiting for the wives to have their babies. And so the nurse came in and said to the first father, he said, "Congratulations, you have twins." And the father said, "That's interesting. I work for the Minnesota Twins." So the nurse comes back in a few minutes later and says, "Congratulations to the second father." And she said, "You have triplets." And he said, "Interesting. I work for the 3M company." So the nurse comes in a few minutes later again and says to the third father, "Congratulations, you have quadruplets." That's the best I can say that word. And so he said, "That's interesting. I work for the 4 Seasons Inn." Or in the corner was the fourth father. And he was moaning and groaning and banging his head against the wall. And the nurse said, "What's wrong with him?" "Well, he works for the 7-Up company." You guys are a hard group. Anyway, good to be with you today. And so my name is Alan. As Christina said, my wife and I have started a ministry about almost a year and a half ago. It came out of our crisis. And so I will share a little bit of our crisis for you. But, uh-oh. Did I do that wrong? Oh, there we are. Isn't my wife beautiful? Yeah. Who's here tonight? Anybody here? Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so my wife and I have been married 37 years. We have 5 kids. And thank you. And they all like me, I think. We have 6 grandkids, 5 boys and 1 girl. And we're enjoying them a lot. I've been in pastoral ministry for 33 years. But after the stroke, I came away from pastoral ministry because I couldn't really function like I needed to be as a pastor and a leader. But anyway, so the last 2.5 years were very difficult for my wife and I. To make a long story short, that's what I want to do for you tonight, is share with you that I was a man that was very broken. As I grew up, there was a lot of trauma in my life. There was a lot of things I didn't take care of. A lot of hurts, a lot of pain. And as I grew up as a young man and then a husband and then a father, I really didn't know how to really fulfill my role as I should as a father and as a husband. And I let the trauma of my life really affect me to the point where I became very angry and very bitter at a lot of people. My soul, really, I didn't protect my soul. To the point where my soul began to really die. Who I was on the inside was shrinking and shrinking. And I allowed the all of those other things, negative things to really infiltrate my heart and my soul. And so through the years, with other traumas and disappointments in ministry and just in life, I allowed them to affect me so deeply that I was a broken man. But no one knew it. They didn't know the anger and the bitterness and the unforgiving spirit that I had within my soul. But God knew. I was asking God to help me because I couldn't ask for help from anybody else because I was proud. I didn't know how to humble myself because I didn't want people to think I was weak. I didn't want anyone to know that I was broken on the inside. And so I allowed all of this stuff to build up and build up and build up to the point where 2 days before I had this stroke that happened to me, my wife, I love her dearly and she loves me and we have a great life together and a great family. But because I was withdrawing from her, she began to think that maybe she can do life without me. And so she was really thinking about, maybe she will leave the marriage. And so that was very difficult to hear after I had this stroke. And so on July 7, 2017, with all this baggage in me, with a lot of anger and bitterness in my soul that was dying, I had this stroke. And the stroke affected me, as I said in my speech, but it was also a severe stroke. People look at me today and say, severe? You look handsome. You look pretty normal and you function very good. Well, I do, because I got into the hospital in a window of an hour and they gave me this TPA drug. It's a clot buster. And it worked so good that my hand that was starting to curl and my right side that was starting to really get weak and numb, and I knew I probably was going to be paralyzed, it left and I regained strength, but I still couldn't talk. The doctor said if I didn't get to the hospital in time, I would have died at home alone. My pressure was 221 over 189. And it was going up very fast because of the blockage in my brain. God spared my life. But what I recognized was that this stroke that happened to me it happened to me for a reason. Many things in our lives we push back, we push away from because we don't like the suffering or the things that happen to us that are nice. But sometimes those things come to us because they will teach us a lesson, or they will help us to turn around and do what's right. And so I knew that this stroke was permitted for a reason. And so I began to talk to God because I couldn't speak to anyone. And I said to God, I said, if you don't restore my body, you see, the very thing that I think helped put me on my back was the stress and burnout. And I was also in a clinical depression. I suffered with severe anxieties for many years, but I kept going. I kept suppressing all of this stuff. So I believe with all those things, not looking after myself physically, emotionally, and mentally, and spiritually, it all came to a head. And I stroked that day, but I said this to God. I said, if you don't restore my body, please restore my soul. Because I knew that was the most important part of me. Because without a healthy soul, we cannot live a healthy life. We cannot move forward because maybe the traumas and those things in our life will hold us back. And it will also affect our spiritual walk with God. Because as a pastor, I was just going through the motions because I didn't care anymore. That's how bad it was. And so this stroke was really a wake-up call for me. And I wish the stroke was the only thing that happened to me. But that was the easy part, because after the stroke, I began to go down a very steep mental and emotional hill. I ended up in the mental health unit for 10 days to try to get myself balanced and focused again. The serotonin levels of my brain were so low that I was very depressed and I wasn't focusing. I was making wrong decisions. See, that's what happens when we have a low neurotransmitter chemicals in our brain. We don't function. It affects our mood disorders. And that's why I was so moody all the time. That's why I was so also with the trauma, but I couldn't get control of my moods at all. So anyway, I went through the stroke and recovered, but 2 months later, I ended up in the mental health unit, and I began to learn more and more about mental health and the healthy soul that I want to talk to you about tonight. So what I want to do is go through some slides with you and just highlight some things. When you think of mental health, what is mental health? Anybody, real quickly, what is mental health? A good answer. What is mental health? Your psyche? Okay, so that's the mental, but what about the health? Yeah. Thoughts affect our actions, okay? And by the way, how we think determines how we feel, and how we feel determines how we behave. That's a good one. What is mental health? Well, look at this Andrews. According to the WHO, is that we can cope with the normal stresses of life. What are the normal stresses of life? Anybody? What are they? Work, friends, kids? Yeah, let me tell you. But I wish we had grandkids first. They're a delight to have. And what's a normal stress? Okay, yeah, traffic. I was on the highway here tonight, getting here, and I should have been here in an hour and a half, but it took me 2 hours. You know why? Accidents and traffic. It was awful. That's why I like to live in the Niagara region. It's not as bad down there. So that's what mental health is. But what is mental illness? Anybody? If mental health is the ability to cope with natural stresses, then mental illness is what? The inability. The inability to cope with the simplest aspects of our everyday life. When I was in my worst state, I couldn't brush my teeth. I couldn't bathe myself or wash myself. I couldn't do the simplest things. I didn't have the will or the want to do it. But what causes mental health disorders? Anybody, give me some answers to what you think causes mental health disorder. Genetics, right? Trauma? Abuse? Anybody else? What? Yep, pre-existing. Yep. So, environmental stresses. What are environmental stresses? Work, noise, kids. You do have kids? Yeah, how many? That's nothing. No, it's something. Just to have one can cause you to go insane at times. Here's another one. Genetic factors, we mentioned that. Another one could be biochemical imbalance. serotonin levels, neurotransmitter chemicals. I can't say that very well, but one of those are serotonin. And when the serotonin is low, it's going to affect you in a negative way. Or a combination of all of these. And then read this statement underneath. 200 classified mental illnesses. But I recently read that there's now over 400 of these mental illnesses, classified forms. I keep hitting the wrong one. So mental health, it affects the brain, right? It affects the brain, which in turn affects the whole life. It affects your physical, it affects your emotional ability, it affects your mental and spiritual and relational. We need to remember though, and this is important, listen to me. If you struggle with any mental health disorder, whether small or great, and it affects you in some way, that there's a balance between having a mental health disorder versus letting that mental health disorder identify who you are. When I was first, after the stroke, one of the things that I kept saying was, my stroke, my stroke, my stroke. I was letting the stroke identify or define now who I was. And so you're not the stroke, you're not the cancer, you're not the mental health disorder or illness. And that's very important. Because if we think that we are that, then we're not going to have sex, not sex, but sex. What's the word? Say it for me. Sex. Yeah, that word in our lives. So we're not the illness or the disorder. Mental health is not your identity, and it's not your fault. Now, let me just say that again. Mental illness is not your fault or failure. And this is where many of us start to get messed up. Because we think that maybe God or maybe something out there is trying to get back at us for maybe something that we did. But if it's environmental or genetic or biochemical or maybe all of the above, that it's outside of myself or genetic inside. There's something I can't control. So it's not your fault. And by the way, I like what the bottom says. God sees you as something worth everything to him. Isn't that right, Father? He does. He sees you as something worth everything to him. And that encouraged me. So as we move on, consider this. And maybe you know this. 1 in 5 struggle. So 1 in 5 in this room struggle with some type of mental health disorder. I don't know what it is. You do. And maybe you feel the stigma of mental health. So you never tell anybody. And so you live in silence of this torment that you're going through because you don't want to be stigmatized. You don't want to be labeled. So many in the church feel that they can't share with anybody because they don't want to feel the stigma or be labeled as one who is weak or sick or whatever. Another one is it affects all. That's, pretty basic, but it does. It affects everybody. The last person on earth I thought who would suffer with mental health was me. I remember as a pastor counseling people, and they would come in to me and say, I don't know what's wrong with me. I can't focus. I can't read my Bible. I can't go on. I'm messing up relationships, and I don't know. I'm something wrong with me. And you know what I did? Because I wasn't thinking about maybe they have some type of mental health disorder or illness or trauma in their life that is affecting their souls. I used to say, well, just read your Bible more. Just pray more. Just trust God more. Well, that's good to know and that's good to do. But if your mind and your brain is not healthy, that's one of the last things you can do. Because you can't read anything. You can't focus on anything well. And so mental health affects everybody. And this is something that is staggering to me. 4,000 people across Canada die by suicide every year. And so that's the average, and that's what we know. But 24% of young people between the ages of 15 and 24, they die by suicide. Because suicide is the 9th leading cause of death in Canada. And 9 out of 10 people that die by suicide is a result of their mental health. And so we have 1,000 of our young people. I don't know how old you are, but 15 to 24. That's a large group of young people. Just my computer. And we have other stats. I'll go through this very quickly. You can read. So, but what about the soul? I want to talk about the soul tonight. What about the soul? Does the soul play a part in mental illness as well? We can talk about the facts all day long about mental health. We can talk about what you are going through tonight. And we can if you want to. But does the soul have a part to play in our mental health? When I say mental health, I mean the health of our brain and our lives. And I think it does. It has a big part to play. We are a whole people. You're not half. You're not just a body. You're not just a soul. You're not just a spirit, but you have a body, soul, and spirit. And all three of those make you a whole person. Our bodies, look at mine, right? Yeah, I know it's awesome. I know. But we have a body, and they're little power packs, and we function in our bodies. But in our bodies are our souls. Our souls are those things. Is that thing that connects with our world, and me, and God. And our spirit is that thing that connects with God as well. But we have, it's not divided. Therefore, when we suffer, listen, when you suffer with mental health issues, not surprisingly, it means every part of ours will be affected. Because my soul was broken, it affected the way I felt. It affected the way I acted. It affected everything about me because my soul was unhealthy. Now, after the stroke, when I began to realize that God allowed this stroke to happen to me for a purpose, and I began to thank God for the stroke because it changed my whole attitude about life and myself and about others. You see, before the stroke, I was very selfish, absorbed with me. But when God gave me a second chance, I now was able to really have Him deal with the soul issues of my life. What's the soul have to do with it? I'm sorry. What's the soul? I gave you a little bit, but tell me what the soul is. Anybody? This is for 100 points on your test. What? bell curve. Listen, man, you're talking way above my pay grade. Yeah. Anybody else? Yep. That's yeah. Okay. You said within? Yep. Listen, the soul is the real you. Think about the real you right now. What do you see? What do you feel? Do you like who you see? Do you like what others see? So the soul is the real you, and it connects with God, with others, and yourself. It's made up of your will when we make decisions. It's made of our mind, and it makes our body. The human soul seeks to integrate our will and our mind and our body into an integral person. It's the deepest part of you, and it is a whole person. I like this. A healthy soul, the real you, is what we need, and it's what God intends for us. When all three entities are in harmony and well-ordered, our life centers is healthy. Our inner world is healthy. So you have to ask, is my inner world healthy? And why not? If it's not healthy, why not? Are there hurts, trauma? Are there disappointments that you have in your life that you never got dealt with? You see, if it affects our mental health and capacity. Many people, and I don't know, and I don't mean to bring up some hard things here, but when people are sexually abused as a young girl or boy, it really does affect the whole person. It damages the soul. And many keep that quiet. And many don't want to deal with it because they are embarrassed, they feel shame, and they feel guilt. But the very thing that that they should talk about, and they don't, it will affect and scar their souls forever. And so if you're in that position, whether it's a sexual abuse or some other abuse, you need to get some help, and you need to talk to someone about those things. You think when we carry these things around in our bodies and in our minds, it will affect. I remember people saying to me, if you don't deal with the issue soon, you will be in trouble as you grow older. You see, when I was young, I thought nothing could take me down because I was Superman. I thought I could live and act and, just go on. It didn't matter what happened to me. It didn't matter about the hurts and the trauma. I just put them away. But they finally caught up to me. And then I had to deal with them in a very hard way. A soul is healthy to the extent that it maintains a strong connection and receptivity to God. So let's move on. Very healthy. It wasn't an unhealthy soul. A person who downcast. A person who has downcast feels like they're in a hole. Feels like they're in darkness. Feels like there's no hope. You see, when I was going through my severe mental health breakdown, the thing that I lost? Hope. I didn't feel that I was worth saving or getting healthy. I lost hope. The darkness came in and it took away the light. But I remember the day when I got help. I remember talking to this psychiatrist after not sleeping for 14 days. I lost 35 pounds. I couldn't function. I couldn't sleep. I was on medication. I was throwing up. And I was losing hope to the point And I never thought I would ever get to this point. I thought, my life, if this is my new normal for the rest of my life, because I didn't see any way out, I thought, I don't want to live this life. So I began to think about how to take my life. And when I began to think that, I knew I was in trouble. So we went to the hospital. A psychiatrist came down to take a look at me and talk to me. And the thing I needed her to say was this: we can help you. And when she said, we can help you, hope sprang back into my life. And then she said, before we can help you, take these pills. And so she gave me some pills to sleep and get my focus back a little bit. And I slept for the first time in 14 days. They came to look at me every half hour in the room. They thought I was dead because I didn't move. I was that tired. But I share that with you because many of us feel downcast. And so a person who is troubled, distress, great pain, not physical pain, but can manifest itself physically. When I'm in deep torture in my mind and soul, it can be like pain. For me, it was like pain, and it was severe. And so a person, an unhealthy soul, is a person who has forfeited their life with things that don't matter. So we stop moving towards the things that are good and matter the most. And we then begin to try to build our lives on things that are negative and things that will ruin our lives. People want to find and they try to escape their pain by many things, don't they? Alcohol, drugs, and so forth. And so they try to escape the pain. Important to note, and I'm going to finish very soon, real soon, like 1 minute. How we doing? Yeah? Okay. Are you still with me? Am I still good looking? Oh, thank you. It's important to note, it's imperative then that our wills, minds, and our bodies are in sync and under the control of God. And I bring God into the picture because He can give hope. Now, let me say this. I was going through a battle in my soul. I was under a lot of stress. And I think this is right to say. Stress can lead to burnout. And burnout can lead to a clinical mental health illness. I was stressed all my life. I was stressed and it didn't deal with the stress. It went to burnout. I never took care of my body. I didn't exercise. I didn't care about myself. I burnt out. I hit a wall. And then it turned into a clinical mental illness. So it's important to understand where you are at in that structure. Why is that important? Because of this. If my soul is unhealthy, stop. Don't read it. Don't read it. I want to ask you something. Everybody here has a soul. You are a person. You think, you believe certain things. Now, what happened to me as I grew up, there were certain things that were told me that I began to believe. I began to believe because people said I had to work hard for people to like me. And so I worked hard. I was told that, because what was important for me was that people really wanted to be around me and like me. And also, it was told that I should strive to do my best all the time. So I didn't want to fail. And so I worked hard at not failing. But then I began to draw conclusions in my mind and my soul that I can't fail. I want people to like me because of what I do for them and how they, how I help them. And so I began to believe so many lies about myself because I drew conclusions to what people said about me or how I should act. Now, you have drawn conclusions about you too. You have drawn conclusions about you based on what you have believed by people that told you who were influential. Maybe your parents, maybe your friends, maybe people in leadership told you certain things that weren't true, but you believed them. And now you're struggling because you have believed so many things about yourself that aren't right and will get you in a turmoil and get you in this performance track. I have to do all the time so people will like me. Does that make sense? I hope so. But if my soul is unhealthy due to conclusions I have made about myself, or I've allowed the trauma of my life to go unchecked, my soul then affects how I treat my body and how I begin to think about God and others and myself. I hated myself. I began to hate God. I began to hate everything about my life. I was in a dark place because I drew conclusions based on lies. That's just emails coming. Proverbs 23:7 says, as a man thinks, so is he. Remember this. I'm going to close. Remember this. And this is something that I had to learn because I always wondered why I was feeling so negative, why my emotions were so negative. So how you think, I said this already, but I want to rehearse it one more time. How you think determines how you feel. And based on how you feel will determine how you act or behave. So I ask people, so what are you thinking? And then I say, if you're thinking things that aren't right about yourself, then why? And so we have to go backwards. We have to understand why I'm thinking those things that are really not good for me to think about myself, about others, about God, or whoever. So we have to go back. And many times, and this is not always, but many times when we go backwards and find out why I'm thinking what I do, that's the source, and that's the source that we have to get dealt with. And sometimes it's very much hard, very agonizing to deal with the things that have happened to us and not cope, but deal with those. So we begin to think properly, feel properly, emotions, and then act appropriately to others, myself, and to God. So I hope this was something that was beneficial for you. And I'm going to turn it back over to Christina. But before she comes, I know you're going to have some questions around you, but this man here is a psychotherapist, registered psychotherapist. You had one here last week. If you want to ask us questions afterwards, either about what I said or our story or ask him personally, we'll like to interact with you. We have some books. We have some material for you. And one of the things that we want to get into our ministry is to get good resources into your hands. So you understand you're educated and you're also equipped and you're engaged in the whole mental health conversation and stigma that we deal with every day of our world. Okay? Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Alan. So just to help fuel conversation, get the ball rolling, we're going to just spend maybe 20 minutes, no more than that, on some questions that I threw out to the hosts. Hosts, I think there's 5 full tables. If you can divide yourselves amongst the 5, start reading some of those questions, see where the conversation takes us, and then just like Alan and Greg so graciously offered, we'll bring the conversation back to you, throw our questions to you. Those of you who are comfortable asking your questions amongst each other, or like with everyone around you, so be it. And I think if you're okay to linger around afterwards, if you wanted to bring your questions privately up to them. My bedtime's 10:30. Don't worry.
Our mind is the greatest battlefield. It's here that our thoughts come. Our
All right, guys, that was around 20-ish minutes, perhaps 22 to be exact. So I hope that allowed us to just get the ball rolling, get our thoughts flowing. We do have the benefit of having two experts up here, so if there was any burning questions on your minds or any questions that you're coming away from after your group discussions, this is the opportunity to ask them. And I'll hand over the mic. Oh, okay, I'll
So you gave us the framework of the body, mind, and soul, and how when you're suffering through a mental illness, it's going to throw everything out of sync. I understand there's probably not going to be one right answer to my question, but I'm curious about where do you start? Do you start with healing the body? Do you start with healing the mind? Or do you start with healing the soul?
I don't think there's a right answer, but I will give you my thoughts. So my thought is, for me, because when my soul was broken, it affected me mentally. So I had to start understanding where my soul was, but before I could do that, I had to be put on my back. You understand where I'm going? Because I never would have dealt with my soul unless I was in a place where I could think about it, right? So where do you start? Well, it's a good question, but I think I think you have to realize that for everyone it could be different. And so if you're dealing with, if you are recognizing that your mind is unfocused, confused, then I think you have to start there. But if you're dealing with inner trauma, because not every mental health disorder is about a broken soul. It could be just a broken mind. I hope that's understood. What do you think? I get the professional here.
I think that really makes good sense. It starts with having discussion here, and I think to have groups of people getting together in the church and to talk about what is going on. And I think that just bringing it out into the open and then talking about, and then you can start to say, oh yeah, I'm starting to recognize some of those things. If it's something that's very physical, I would go to a family doctor and start to talk there. And sometimes if there is a mental health illness, then there might be some medications that can be started. Sometimes when it does have to do with the past or trauma, if it has to do with our souls, then just kind of having discussions about good Christian counselors that are out there. And that could be and then that could be helpful with regards, because then they can do a really good assessment and to find out what's going on. And this can be with physiotherapists, it can be with social workers, it can be with a nurse, it can be a doctor, it can be recreation therapists. And they, by talking to you, can say, ooh, there's something going on here. Maybe you should go to a doctor, and they can talk about maybe there is something with anxiety or depression, and maybe medication could be helpful. And then, again, it's the whole person perspective. And no matter what the background, they can make a suggestion and then you can go get some help in that particular area.
I think what Greg said makes sense, but I think you have to be assessed somehow. Bell has just talk, right? Well, that's talk. And I think that's a good start because we seldom want to talk about those things. And so I think we need to be with people that we trust and people that can help us or guide us or direct us to the right people or source, either the soul or the mind or the spirit. Anyway, ta-da! You're welcome. Anybody else? Yeah, right there.
Okay, so I think I came a little late to the talk. So
You did. We marked it down. You're late.
I'm sorry.
No, it's
But
teasing.
I just wanted to ask. I know you had said like you took like when you had experienced the stroke, like you were on medication, and I believe like for like you said 14 days or so. Like, when did you figure that it was just an issue of your soul, and if like because like I mean I studied, I know like antidepressants typically take 4 weeks to work. Like, do you think if you had like done the course, like it could have been something else? Like, how did you decide it was like from the soul solely?
Well, the stroke I had was really the catalyst for me. So when I had this stroke and I was lying in bed, in the hospital bed, for me, I knew why I was there. Because I was so broken on this side. I have on my arm here a tattoo. Johnny Erickson Tata, I don't know if you know her, but she was paralyzed from the neck down. She dove into the water as a young lady, and she was paralyzed. But she came to love God and serve God, and then she was asking the question, why? Why God will allow this to happen to her? And somebody that was helping her said this to her: God permits what He hates to accomplish what He loves. And so I was wondering why the stroke happened to me. And it didn't take me long to realize it was a part of my soul issue. So I knew I was on my back in the hospital. This is a personal story, right? I knew what's going on, and I knew God had put me there for a reason. So I went through this ugliness, so I will be restored in my soul. So I can think what I'm trying to say, it was that crisis that helped me understand that my soul was really damaged. Now, the medication I was on wasn't working. So the doctor put me on medication after the stroke and after I was going through this depression and anxiety and mental breakdown. For me, the drug that I was on was going to take 6 to 8 weeks, not 4 weeks. And so I was waiting and waiting and waiting for this to help me. Because many times we think if we take a drug or medication, it will help me like that. But it doesn't. And sometimes it's trial and error. So you need multiple drugs together to help you get balance. And so the medication wasn't working until I went into the mental health unit and they began to give me some new drugs. And there was 2 that worked for me. And so I began. And then I could really think through the trauma and the experience and deal with them in greater ways. Does that kind of answer?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
Yeah? Thank you.
All right. Hey, guys. All right. Greg, this is sort of for you, so listen up. All right. So, I am John. The fact that you know my name already is very not good. I made a bad impression already. All right. So, Greg, like Alan said, he got, if I'm listening correctly, which probably I didn't, but the reason you got help for your mental health was after a crisis. And the reason I see a lot of people getting help for mental health is after a crisis. Like for me, for instance, I bust my shoulder, whatever. The next thing I know, I'm a doctor. Hook me up to any MRI, any ultrasound, figure out what the heck's wrong with me, and give me all the drugs, and we're gonna get through this. Mental health? Absolutely not. Mental health, coffee, put a smile on, sarcasm, okay, it'll eventually work itself out. It doesn't. So really, the difference is the stigma. really there's a stigma in society, no one's getting help for mental health. So what is your advice on get people to really overcome that stigma? Overcome, like, hey, you have anxiety, you have depression, you're just not happy with life, or whatever. Because in reality, it really sucks getting through life, with a busted shoulder, and you'll get it fixed as fast as possible. But if you have depression, anxiety, whatnot, that will really hinder your life experience and really how productive you are in life and how far you actually reach.
That's a really good question. That's right. Stigma is just another form of judgment of other people. So definitely, again, getting it out in the open. Having forums like this and discussing it in the church is the place to start. And just to see that it isn't just, when we're judging people, we all judge other people, but to see that really this is something that is going on. God still loves you, loves us, and we can help each other, and just to listen to each other, and then to listen to each other, to care for each other, and to get people the help that they really need, whether it's physical or whether it's counseling of some kind, in all those ways.
This is a fact. Men don't want to get help. I'm sorry. Many men don't want to go to the doctors about anything. My wife had to tell me today, you're out of medication, call the nurse. I said, okay, I will, right? So, but for me, I didn't want to deal with what was going on because many people don't want to be seen as weak. See, I thought I was Superman. Want to see my ass? It's not there. It never was. And so we often think we're Superman or women and we don't need help. We don't need each other. But I found in this crisis, for the first time in my life, I needed other people in my life. Community is so important. That's what we were talking about. Community. So, I think to get over the stigma, we have to just walk through it. It's a mark of disgrace based on a characteristic, attribute, or a personal struggle. And so stigma can be anything, but mental health is the big one. I think I agree. What you're doing here tonight is so important, and talking it out, right? So I think it's because we're proud. We don't want to be seen as Supergirl, just Superman,
So if I could just summarize real quick,
Yeah.
It's more or less just like, hey, you know what? It's okay to admit, just put your pride aside. If you are feeling whatever you're feeling, please do get the help that you need. And we as a community have a responsibility that if someone, has whatever, has mental stigma, we could really support them. It's not a judgment thing; it's more of a support thing.
This is what we tend to say when we have someone struggling with something.
You have so much to live for. Why do you want to die?
So somebody comes and talking about around, what's the better response?
You are important to me. Your life is important to me.
The red says, "Here's my advice." The green says, "Talk to me. I'm listening."
So when people come to us and say, I'm struggling, that's what we do. Our advice sometimes sucks. Be honest. What's the next one?
So what's wrong with you? Shouldn't you be better by now? I'm here for you. We will get through this together.
Sometimes we say, even when people lose a loved one, you should be over this. how we break the stigma.
We all go through times like this, and the answer is, I know you have a real illness, and that's what causes these thoughts and feelings.
So the way we respond to people is so important. Another one is all in your mind. You may not be able to exactly how you feel, but just now. Or look at the bright side. You are not alone in it. It's a big difference. How we respond.
We don't have to have all of the answers. None of us do. The important thing is relationship and just caring enough to listen and to ask questions and then to give resources and to help them to get to somebody, because this isn't something we have to tackle all by ourselves. And don't try to be an island and do it all yourself, but there are people out there to really help. So it starts with caring enough to listen.
All right. So last 30 seconds, that's it? Fine, I'll make it quick. Greg, all right, Greg, before you leave, so I want to explore more about this. What are some resources you want to give us that we could, if I say, hey, I'm interested in working on my mental health, what are some good resources where we can start?
Okay, that's fantastic. We have a sign-up sheet here to have your name and email. Also, there are resources. There's a website, the Agora Network resource on the internet. There are books up here, and please come and take a look at the different resources there are up here. Also, there is, through the Agora Network website, you can find a group that's called Living Grace Group. So this is a group where it can be led by someone within your church, and what it does, it's like 12 to 16 weeks of talking about mental health and bringing it in to the faith community and talking about the whole person. And again, that gives a place for people to talk and resources. Plus, there are good websites where there are to get resources for Christian counselors. And again, within any church, there are going to be professionals who are in the people helping type of work. And they're going to be able to maybe make a list of good resources for counseling, for therapy, good doctors who are Christians. And then that becomes a resource, and that could be nailed down and written down, and then you could share those. And then when one person goes to a counselor and says, this person, oh, this was so helpful, then that could be given to leaders in the church who can have a list, and then that way you'll have somebody who says, I went to this person and it was very helpful. And that's going to be a really good.
Canadian Mental Health Association is also a great resource. I was at a church all day yesterday in Scarborough, and they have a nurse on staff. And what she did, because we're coming in to talk about mental health, she listed in the bulletin a whole page, 2 pages of different resources in their area for people to respond to if they need. So there's plenty, and like organizations like ours and others will have resources for you. So I don't know if that. Public health? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Comment.
I mean, like say for instance, if all these counseling doesn't work, we have to know that Jesus Christ says, in this world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer, I have overcome the world.
Yeah. You're absolutely right, and I appreciate what you said there, and I agree wholeheartedly. But we have to realize that not all mental health is spiritual. It is clinical as well. And that's the part that we tend to forget in the church, because we want to make it all about spiritual, but it can be as well. So we have to go and understand more and more about the physical, clinical side of our brains. And when they're on focus, we're going to be on focus in many things, right? So, good comment.
By the whole person. It's just so powerful. The spiritual aspect, definitely.
Yeah.
Relationship. God cares. God. And it's God who gave us the ability to be able to go to school, learn all the different biblical types of, and to develop medications and hormone therapy. All of those. And
I said to people all the time, it's okay not to be okay. And it's okay to have a therapist and Jesus. It's okay to be in a medication. I'm not ashamed that I'm on medication, because without it, I'm unfocused and I can't focus on the important things in life, right? And the lady in red, please answer your own question. Give your question.
Thank you so much for being so vulnerable to share your story and to be so honest. And I think that kind of opens it up for anyone to want to hopefully get help. Just a couple of things, and I just a plug for, and you mentioned about men not wanting to get help. So there is a website now that was created by men who also struggle to get help called headsupguys.org. And it's a way that men can anonymously go and get help and resources if they're not quite up to, formally asking for it. That's the first thing. The second thing is, as we're talking about like the body, mind, and soul breakdown, as with the body, like, you go hiking, you get a bruise, you get a scrape, you go home and you do first aid.
Right.
You get like you break your ankle, you go to emergency. I'm just wondering, when it comes to our own soul and mental health, like what is it, like I'm so appreciating the conversation we're having as a society and as a Christian community. I'm just wondering how we can kind of also differentiate when it is just first aid that's needed, like when it's self-care that's needed, or when it's spiritual care that's needed versus truly clinical care that's needed.
Right. And that's where you need to be able to be with a professional to talk to them about it. Because now, if it's a secular professional, and I would tell you, if you find someone that's good, that's not a religious person, stay with them. But if you're if God is important, if faith is important to you, then you have to find someone that has a worldview of faith in God, so you can dialogue on the same path. So I think they can determine for you whether it's clinical or whether it's a spiritual. Now, sometimes it's both, right? It can be both. And so I think professional mental health experts can define that for people. For me, it was a crisis that helped me. I knew I was in bad shape spiritually, and I knew I was in bad shape in other ways, but it took a crisis for me to wake up. So I don't know if that's...
Thank you. This is why we need each other, because, I'm a professional. I had a lot of years' experience in counseling. And then all of a sudden I realized, wow, I didn't even realize that my father had anxiety. And then I started to learn that, wow, there's some traumas in my mother's family. And then I started to realize, whoa, I got to admit, here I am, a professional therapist, and I've got my own anxieties. I have my own depressions. And then I kind of saw the history and I thought, whoa, there's stuff going on. So the thing is that even though I've got this training and all this, I can be blindsided. I cannot even recognize what's going on in my own life. And that's why talking to Alan, things will come out and all of a sudden he'll say something to me and then I'll say, whoa, I didn't even realize that was going on. We need each other. And those kinds of things too and then you can realize, wow, didn't realize that there was something going on here. There was a question over here too. I just definitely want to,
Father,
okay.
do you have a question?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, jumping off of one of John's many, many questions, I am very familiar with what he was talking about with regards to the broken shoulder, and just I need to get it fixed as soon as possible. I was just wanted to hear your thoughts on the importance of patience in the healing process.
I want a quick fix. So I thought the medication would fix me right up. But it takes time. Because we don't get to the place overnight in our souls. It takes a long time for our souls to get so damaged. So it takes a long time. Are you talking about patience or being a patient? Yeah. So the waiting, it was hard. It was so hard because I wanted to feel normal again, whatever that is, you know. And I remember when I started to feel good, I said to my wife, after months of going through this journey, when I finally started to feel myself again, I said to her, it feels so good to feel good. I forgot what it was like to feel good again. And so it does take time, but you have, and my wife and other caregivers were involved in my recovery. So I had to really rely on them as well.
Just to add, along with what Alan said, that was really good. I've seen medication help people all of a sudden, like Alan said about the sleep. Like, you can't function if you haven't slept. You just can't. And so when you get a good night's sleep, several days of good sleep, whoa, that makes all the difference in the world. And it's just amazing. And then I've seen people who couldn't function in their world, and just the medication helped just to clarify some things. So yes, there are things that are just immediate and really quick, but yeah, this is the long run. Anything in life it takes work, it takes perseverance sometimes, and it definitely does take patience. And yeah, there's a work in progress. And so, but it's worth it, right? And it's our life anyway, and we can deny things and not move on, but our life is still going to go on. So we might as well be working on things and coming to God and allowing Him to kind of make some changes. So, yeah, it's sometimes it can be quick, but yeah, most of it just takes time.
There is a continue.
Well, thank you for coming, trekking it all the way from Niagara, being mindful for the of the time. You probably have like around an hour and a half commute. But if anyone does have any lingering questions and they want to bring it up to you, by all means, come afterwards. If you guys can help with packing away the chairs and the tables, that would be greatly appreciated. A couple announcements. The Young Women's Bake Night is this February 29th. Registration is on the email that I sent out. If anyone doesn't receive my emails, come to me. I'll grab your email address. I only send out an email once a week, and just to inform you of what's coming up in the next crew series. The Inter-Parish Graduate Fellowship event is March 22nd. The topic is in line with our series. It's Living Your Best Life Through Mental Health and Spiritual Growth. The speaker is Sandra Tedros. Registration link is also in the email that I provided. And the Edge Calvary Retreat, April 3rd to 5th, A Journey to the Afterlife. John Habib is the speaker. Again, registration link is on the email I sent. There's still plenty of food, so make your way there, linger, chat. Yes, and you have an announcement, and so does Abuna Bashoy.
Also, if you want to get on our website, do that. But if you want us to do it for you, we have got the form. Email there. I'll put it in. So every month, you get an updated list.
Okay.
Just very quickly before we pray, we have many blessings for the beginning of the Great Lent, of course. We started yesterday, and we are starting small groups during the Great Lent, a great way to just build fellowship and community. We are going to have a young adult men's small group and a young adult women's small group. So is anyone interested in joining a small? It's going to be for the men. It's going to be Wednesday nights. Is any of the guys interested in the Wednesday night small group? You need time to think about it. If you need, that's okay. That's okay. From the ladies, please speak with Marianne Shahata after we finish. All right. God bless you. Have an amazing evening. It's